Can
Hello
you
there. How you
hear me?
doing?
Cool.
Eric, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
And I've come to know the wish list of my father. I've come to know the shipwrecks where he wished. I've come to wish aloud among the overdressed crowd. Come to witness now the sinking of the ship, throwing pennies from the sea top next to it.
How you doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
Considering the times, I'm pretty good.
They are wild times, are they not?
Yeah, they really.
I heard on Sunday that your little one is getting out of the crib. Has this week gone better?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think we're just gonna have to put her in a bed. I mean, there wasn't too much sleep to begin with, but yeah, this getting out of the crib business is pushing us to a breaking point. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I bet. I mean, that's the hardest job they say is being a parent. I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to talk to me. Um,
Sure.
you know, it's a wild, wild world, and we're just trying the best we can to have some kind of semblance of a gathering,
Hmm.
and have some kind of something. So I just I have way more questions than I need, I'm very sure. So we're just gonna kind of jump all around on some things.
Right.
And let's just first start talking about your experience with the Kerrville Folk Festival. Had you been to the festival or heard about the festival prior to being one of the acts on the stages?
Yeah, I'd heard a lot about it. I mean, it's very famous in Texas. So when my wife and I moved to Austin in about 2011, 2010, it was on it was on the lips of a lot of people that we talked about that it was a cultural landmark.
Yeah, did you reach out to the fest to try to play, or did we reach out to you?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think by 2012 or 2013, we were booked to play there. I came there with my band. Remember, we were down there the year the Milk Carton Kids were there that year. I'm good buddies with those guys, so they were down there and we played. And then a couple of years later, my wife had a band called the Hems, which was a duo. And I believe, I don't think I'm making this up, they either won New Folk or they got very close to winning New Folk in like, I don't know,
Okay.
2014 or 2015. So the Hems, you guys could probably look it up and see if
Yeah, I did. I looked
you,
up I looked up when your 2012 schedule and I saw that the Milk Carton Kids played. Was that the first time for you to meet them or had you already known them?
I'd known them for years.
Okay.
Kenneth, one of the guitar players, well, not one of the guitar,
He's now your producer.
yeah, he produced a record of mine,
Yeah.
and he and I, he first came to a show of mine in Los Angeles in 2008 or 2009. So we've been friends for a long time. So it was fun to catch up with him there at Kerrville. That was back when Kenneth drank a lot more. So it was,
I think that's when all of us drink a lot more.
yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think I'm still keeping up. So
Fighting the good fight.
I'm fighting the good fight with the rest of us. Yeah.
So yeah, your wife used to be in a band. Does she still have musical aspirations? I know she's a teacher now and a mom, so is she still playing at all around the house and anything?
No, my wife, the Hems played around Austin for a long time, 3 or 4 years. And they played around the hill country. They play, Kent Finlay down at Cheatham Street Warehouse took a real interest in them and helped them record their first record before he passed away. And then they go to Houston and play Anderson Fair, and they'd play in LaGrange at, I think it's the Bugle Boy or the Bugler. And then when she decided, I think what happened was she looked at my career, and I'd had a lot of luck and a lot of kind of doors had opened for me through sheer luck. And she could look at that and see even that wasn't a cup of tea. Like you still had to tour a bunch, and I was by no means rich and anything like that. And so I think she looked at it and said, she just decided she wanted something else with her life. So she pursued teaching, and that's what she's going forward with full time. But the Hem stuff is still up on Spotify, and it still sounds great. So
It is, and it does. Do y'all ever play in the house together just for fun? Does she pick it up
we'll
at
play for
all?
the kids. Yeah, we'll sing for the kids. When we're bored. So
I read that your dad used to play a little bit when he was in his 20s and 30s. Is he the one who taught you how to play guitar?
Yeah, I mean, he was my reason for being interested in music and going that direction. He was more of a piano player himself, but he got me a guitar when I was little. He got me guitar lessons, and he got me a lot of great records that really inspired me. He got me, the first John Prine record, the self-titled one when I was really young, and all that type of stuff. A lot of John Hyatt records he got for me when I was young. A lot of Warren Zevon stuff. So he's a major reason for why I do what I do.
Was there a lot of music being made around you while you were growing up, or was it just these really iconic records that you were getting your hands on?
Well, yeah, I mean, my dad would have band practice over here at nights, and so I'd hear them going to sleep. He still had a band after I was born, and then I became pretty aware. I grew up in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., and so I was aware from a pretty early age of the hardcore scene that came out of, Fugazi and Minor Threat and everything that was coming out on Discord Records via Ian Mackay, who's the brain trust behind that. So, besides the stuff that my dad was giving me, I was very aware of all the hardcore music that was coming out of DC, which was a real genuine cultural phenomenon. You know what I mean? It was like a real local thing. I mean, it was punk music, but it was a type of punk music that wasn't really happening anywhere else.
Did you go to punk shows growing up?
The ones that I could get to, I mean, I was pretty young and I was in the suburbs, so I think we went a couple times to see Fugazi play a free concert in DC, but no, I mean, I wasn't in too many basements or DIY lofts or anything like that.
Those are scenes for sure. Very different than the folk music song circle.
Yes and no. I mean, but folk music is pretty DIY too,
Oh, well, yeah, the DIY aspect for sure. Just kind of like the energy, the hype in a underground punk show, and then a house concert song circle.
Definitely much different. But I mean, the idea that you would book yourself, that you would go sell your own merch, that you would make your own merch, that you wouldn't be reliant in some way on some larger corporation to make it happen for you. I think it really goes hand in glove with one another.
I've come to roam the forest past the village with a dozen lazy horses in my cart. I've come here to get high, to do more than just get by. I've come to test the timber of my heart. Oh, I've come to test the timber of my heart. Now I have come to be untroubled in my seeking. Now I have come to see that nothing is for naught. I've come to reach out blind, to reach forward and behind. For the more I seek, the more I'm sought. Yeah, the more I seek, the more I'm sought.
So, I mean, it sounds like your folks were pretty supportive of you growing up with your creative endeavors. And it seems that you wanted to be a playwright. You kind of like put music to the side. It wasn't as important. And then you made a switch somewhere, deciding to not finish your last semester of college as a playwright. What kind of pushed you to go to playwriting when you had that firm musical foundation?
Yeah, I did take quite a bit of a detour. It was two things. I had a teacher in high school that really changed my life, a guy named Bob Garman, who's still teaching theater somewhere in Maryland, I think in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. But he really inspired me. And so, I would, when I took his first class, I really was inspired by what he was doing. So I tried out for all the plays, and that's what I spent all my time doing after school, extracurricular wise in high school. And then so I thought, well, maybe I should do that for a living. So I went to go study that in college in North Carolina. But I was pretty unhappy in college. I was pretty unhappy in an institutional setting, pretty unhappy in an educational setting. And so I moved on. I moved to Chicago, and I moved back to music simply because it was something I could do by myself, that I basically didn't need any money to do. I just needed an acoustic guitar, and then I could go to all these open mics that were in the paper. And just, I didn't need a theater space. I didn't need a cast that I had to pay. I didn't need insurance. I didn't need to pay for a script. It was just, you go play your own songs. And there was no real opportunity for that theater wise. So it was just, I wanted to communicate with people. And I've always been interested in new mediums that people are, I've always been interested in working in the mediums that people are actually paying attention to. You know what I mean? And it just seemed like at that time that people were paying attention to music in a different way, and that I could do it for free. So that's why I moved towards that medium there.
As someone who abandoned a thesis and walked away from a master's to pursue songwriting, I gotta ask you this question. Do you regret not finishing that last semester in that play, Austin Fish? Do you regret abandoning that project?
No, leaving college was the best thing, that it was the best decision I ever made, besides marrying my wife and having kids. It was the best. It worked for me, you know what I mean? And I think we're quick to push a lot of kids towards college who might not necessarily belong there. You know what I mean? And I think I was one of those people. Not that I didn't, I mean, I think I had the mental capacity to do it, but, or maybe I didn't. Who knows? I mean, maybe the proof is in the pudding, but I just think, I think that some kids that age are meant to be out in the world and just kind of working and doing things. And I think that's where I was meant to be. So it made sense.
I totally understand and appreciate that. Saying the second best thing was being a husband and a dad. What has changed about your songwriting, be it the process or the end product, since taking on those two new life roles?
I tend to be a lot more just decisive as I write songs. And I think that would be the case anyway, just because I'm getting older and I've just written a lot of songs. I mean, when I was down in Austin for 7 or 8 years, when I was off the road, I didn't have kids, and I would go to UT, to the, what's that building where the Cactus Cafe is? It's like their student union.
Yeah.
I would just go there, and I'd write songs every day. I would just write for hours. I wrote hundreds of songs. And so that made me more definitive as far as knowing when something was going to work or not. And then that gets pushed even further when you have a family, because it's such a zero-sum game with time. You just have so much little time left. And so it's made me be a little bit less precious with songs. I remember I did an interview with Amanda Palmer, who's a songwriter, a very famous songwriter. And
yeah, she's great.
The same thing kind of happened to her, where she's much more likely to just make definitive decisions and then just move on and not stress about it. And that's the same thing that I've done. I can't say that it was for better or for worse, but it's certainly been the change that I've made.
So how long do you let a song sit on the shelf before you throw it into the boneyard? Is that part of this more decisive, where it's just like, I don't want to mess with that, and it's just done?
I move on pretty quickly. Yeah. I'll get like a demo of it just to make sure that there wasn't anything there in the future as I'm going back to comb through old odds and ends. But I move on pretty quickly from songs if I just don't really feel like they're giving me a really strong return really early on.
What do you do with your boneyard? Do you completely like throw it into the fire and then you never see or hear of it again? Or do you keep it as something that maybe you'll look back on later and see it in a new light?
I keep it on hard drives of demos that I've done. And if I have time to work, which is really precious, as we've just talked about, and I don't have an idea coming to me cold, you know what I mean? And I'm just sitting there and I'm spinning my wheels for a long time. Then I'll go back through my bone pile of songs and see if there's anything that I can try to expand upon again. But no, it's just there for, it's kind of cool to see, even if I've done a bunch of work and none of it was good, it's kind of there to prove to myself that it wasn't for lack of trying, Right.
And that you did the work, and there it is,
And
what do you do with the songs that you yourself have said are not Joe Pug songs? there's songs that you might like, but you don't think that they're Joe Pug songs. What do you do with those? Do those automatically become a bone pile, or is there like a special little folder for like shopping them to other people or something to give them a life still?
Yeah, that's something that I'm working on right now. Coronavirus has really made me realize that I really want to do a paradigm shift away from being on the road. Before I had kids, I was on the road for about 200 days a year for about a decade, which is good and fine. I mean, I think you should do that when you're in your 20s just to get good. But then when I had kids, I moved to about 70 or 80 shows a year. And I'm finding now that even that's a little bit too much to be away. So I really want to do a paradigm shift. And part of that is doing a streaming show. Part of that is doing a podcast. And the last piece of it, I think, will be writing for other people or writing to brief. And I'm actually exploring some opportunities on that right now. So
That's really
I've come to meet the sheriff and his posse, and offer him the broadside of my jaw. I've come here to get broke, and maybe buy my smoke. We'll go drinking 2 towns over after all. We'll go drinking 2 towns over after all. I've come to meet the legendary takers. I've only come to ask them for a laugh, where they say I come with less than I should rightfully possess. I'll say the more I buy, the more I'm bought, and the more I'm bought, the less I cost.
So
That's really cool to hear that you're making the most of these really crazy times. And it kind of leads into some questions about the industry itself. Obviously had issues that we were just trying to keep our head above water on. And now we've got this really big flashlight showing that it really wasn't working for musicians. Like we were definitely, I think, getting the worst end of the stick, to where, like you've said, I mean, I'm a listener of the Working Songwriter, and a lot of times you've mentioned how like you work at a bar, just a different bar every night,
Yeah.
And how you're realizing now, having some time at home and getting off of that cycle, that some of the negative impacts of taking these bar gigs, that are just gigs to be a spot on the tour, or gigs that you're going to get some set money, but it's not going to fulfill you as a songwriter. There's like a songwriter and there's an entertainer aspect of this whole thing. So it seems like you've been really successful with the Sunday songs, creating a nice little community like you would maybe a residency at a bar.
Mhm.
So you do want to stick with that post. If we like open back up, you want to tack that on to something that you do more regularly?
Oh yeah. I mean, if the Deus Ex Machina came down tomorrow and just tapped our world and coronavirus were to disappear magically, I would still continue this weekly streaming show. I'd actually been moving towards this before coronavirus happened, and I've been studying how to put together the technical end of it, which is kind of hard to figure out. Like there's a lot of things to figure out, but technology has really caught up where it's relatively affordable. The streaming bandwidth has really caught up. And yeah, I mean, this streaming show that I'd kind of been dreaming about was kind of put into fast forward because of coronavirus. And now it will certainly be a permanent fixture of what I do. I'm just going to be there every Sunday night going forward, because I think it allows you to, I think of myself as more wanting to broadcast to the world what I do rather than having to go out into the world and having people come out to a club. I just think technology is caught up in a way where I don't necessarily have to do that anymore. I will do that if the demand were there. But at a certain point, I spent 10 or 15 years going around and playing to 100 and 150 people, and I'm grateful for all the people that came out. But at a certain point, you just hit an age where, the economics of doing that and paying a band and paying an agent, manager, and hotel room and plane tickets and gas. Like at a certain point, the economics of it just don't add up. The toll that it takes on you just doesn't add up. The mental health part of it, and I'll be frank, speaking from personal experience, the substance abuse part of it really catches up. It's a young man's and a young woman's game, doing that type of stuff. And I don't regret anything about it. But now that technology has opened some new doors, I'm going to walk through that door and not stay where I was, certainly.
So that when you bring up the logistics, the economic logistics behind it, money is always a thing that we're like not allowed to talk about, but yet it's the thing that we're all tied to, and it's all the money aspect of these COVID closures put all of us kind of on the chopping block, be it a festival or a venue or a musician who, you know, was getting enough to get by, but now they have to like go get a straight job, you know, sort of deal. Do you have any kind of like, we could do it this way, you know, like middle of the night epiphany, like how do we, and I guess that goes hand in hand with the other question of why is it so hard to monetize music? You know, like we monetize all other aspects of our lives, even entertainment things like a movie or getting a book or something, but there's something about music that makes it really hard to monetize, be it the creator or the venue trying to share the creation. Why do you think that is? Like, we don't want to talk about money, yet we all are bound by it, and we don't really know how to ask for it for our music. Like, what do you think that is? Do you have any?
I think it's really hard to monetize creative work in general. And I think what ends up happening is the work that actually makes money, because there is money to be made in the music business. There's people making money, you know, that have songs that have become hits or cult classics or whatever. It's a small sliver of songs. And now that we have Spotify where people can pretty much listen to whatever the hell they want to listen to, we can't say anymore that it's like, well, it's the corporations just shoving a couple top 40 songs down our throats. Like it's the listeners voting on what they want to listen to. And it turns out that they only want to listen to what they deem to be the best of the best of the very, very, very best. And it's that or it's nothing. And there's not a lot of stuff in between. It's really hard to have, let's say, a middle class hit in music. And so I don't know what that is. I mean, that even plays itself out in my own catalog. Like I've written and released dozens and dozens and dozens of songs. And there's one song of mine called Hymn 101 that's made me all the money that I've made. And all the other songs have made me nothing. You know what I mean? So and how does that work? I wrote that song in 20 minutes and I've spent a lifetime writing these other songs, and I'm not complaining. You know, I'm glad that I have something to hang my hat on and stay, you know, in the black creatively. Like that's awesome. And I'm very grateful, but I don't pretend to understand why there's such an unequal distribution. I just know that it's there. And I also know that now that Spotify is here, we have as democratic as a system as possible to distribute music, and listeners are still basically upvoting it in a way where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Do you think after talking to Mike Sloan on the Working Songwriter that you will implement, kind of mix how you were doing your sample CDs that you would send out? And he's suggesting putting only a couple of tracks out every few months. Do you want to maybe combine those things and like just drop a few tracks in Spotify every so months, and then at the end of the year come out with one thing that had all of them? Is that something that you're thinking about implementing since?
It is. Yeah, it is. And, you know, I'm talking to a couple record labels now about my next album. And there is part of me that just wants to just not worry about it and go old school and just say, here's the masters, give me a little bit of money and you worry about how to put this out. And I'm just going to go make more creative stuff, because that just seems like a relatively conservative thing to do. And it could save my time to make more songs or watch my kids or do whatever. But, you know, there's a big part of me that really does want to put my money where my mouth is and just follow what I believe the new paradigm to be, which is these streaming services. They don't want to see you put out a new album once every 18 to 24 months. They want like a constant drip of a more singles driven business. And I think if and when I'm going to do it that way, which I think I probably will, if I don't go the label route, is I'll basically bifurcate it. I will slowly drip songs and creative work onto the Spotify platform, and on one side of things, and on the other side, I will sell directly to people who listen to my music the full album straight off, either in digital form on Bandcamp or via vinyl, just sending it to them, so that you can do fan service and get people. It is a complete cohesive work of art that goes to them. But as far as Spotify is concerned, it's a slow but steady release of singles over time. So I think I'm heavily considering that, and whether I do that or not will be contingent on whether I chicken out or not at the last minute.
Well, I mean, what do you have to lose?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, in some ways, I think you have to lose the fact that listeners still do view things in album release form. So people may not understand what's going on. You won't get that buzz of a new album coming out. Certainly traditional press does not understand that in any way, shape, or form. You can't, they want to hear that you have a new record coming out, that you're doing press on that cycle. And so you get to sit down for a podcast or, All Songs Considered or whatever, so you would certainly miss out on traditional press. But I've always missed out on traditional press anyway, even when I've, hired publicists to do it. So in some ways, I guess I'm still holding out, hope that maybe I'll write an album good enough that it'll get recognized by traditional and legacy media. But in my heart of hearts, I know that that's probably not going to be the case, and that I should probably just go entirely into the new model.
There's a artist that you might be familiar with, Jonathan Bird. He's also played at the Kerrville Folk Festival, and he's had a live stream going on for about 3 years now.
Cool.
So he's done he does them every Wednesday nights. Might be worth having him maybe on the show to talk, because he's also done some videos to help people understand their lighting and break down the lighting to use and cameras and all sorts of stuff. What do you think has been the most helpful purchase, if you needed to make one, to make these live streams be so successful for you? What new gear or technique?
It's expensive. The stuff is expensive for live streaming. I'm not going to lie. I put many thousands of dollars into it because I knew it was in a place where, well, I'll put it this way. I started the streams first with a sort of lesser technology to just kind of test the market for it. I saw that there was a market there, that people wanted it, that they wanted to pay for it. And once that was the case, I decided to invest some money in it. And you need three things. You need a good camera. I'd recommend anything that Black Magic does. That's the name of a hardware company for different cameras. Those will run you, plus a lens, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1,500. Then you need a good mic and audio interface. Those are a lot cheaper. You can get a good mic and a decent interface, good mic for $200 and a decent interface for about the same. And then you need a computer that can handle the graphics bandwidth to bring it through. And that is relatively expensive. I think on the bottom end, which is what I have, you need a Mac, not laptop, but desktop to make that happen. But if people were to test the market themselves for it and see that there was a desire or a demand from people and that people would pay for it, I think it's totally worth it, because I think it is the future of what we're going towards. I'm very bullish on live streams, even post-coronavirus.
Now you've come to take their servants and their surplus. Now you've come to take their raincoats and their speed. I've come to get my fill, ransack and spill. I've come to trade the harvest for the seed. Oh, I've come to trade the harvest for the seed.
What kind of shows do you think you'll be looking for when you do decide? No one wants to be first. No one wants to be last. There are a few people still are going out and playing now in some smaller festival outdoor type things, and some bars and venues, depending on what parts of the country you're on, are open and having live music. So, and what kind of things do you think you'll be looking at when you decide to go book again?
First of all, the amount of pay. And then,
Fair enough.
and then a relatively close second would be how serious the promoter is taking COVID precautions for people. I'm going to do my first show since March in a couple weeks. It's outdoors. It's socially distanced. It's, people are buying pods basically that only you and your people that you're cohabitating with can go into. For example, later this afternoon, I have to be on a call with the production staff from the venue solely to go over the precautions on my end and like best practices for myself to not put other people in danger. So this group is paying very well, number one, and taking precautions super seriously. So that makes it a no-brainer. So I would take on any jobs like that. I just don't know who is going to be taking the risk like that going forward, because it's a huge economic risk. It's a huge liability risk, I'm sure, for them. I would imagine this brewery that's putting on this show coming up probably had to get all sorts of different riders of insurance to protect themselves. So I don't know. I don't think live music is coming back for a really long time. Like, I really don't. I hope I'm wrong about it.
Definitely not the way we know it.
Right. Yeah.
Going back to your time at Kerrville, did you go into the campgrounds at all to play afterwards?
I didn't. I was just finishing. I guess this was 2012. So I was finishing about it was the last show of an 11-week US tour. I hadn't seen my wife in 11 weeks. So we finished that, and we went, and we were living in Austin, so we just went home. I know about the campfire scene. My wife ended up playing it when she had her band big time, but unfortunately I never got to do it myself.
Unfortunately, that was my first year at Kerrville. Changed my life entirely. And I didn't get to see your set because I worked at a Boy Scout camp, and the next day was the first day of staff. Like Sunday was staff day. So I couldn't catch. I was really bummed about that. But like I said, it really changed my life, because there's a community of people that are just really dedicated to encouraging the songwriting. And we've had, through the New Folk competition, people that you've even interviewed, like Anais Mitchell on there, and several of the people on the Working Songwriter have been people that have played our stages or have inspired these, campground creations that are happening. What do you think it is about the festival that can help birth projects like Brothers and The Deer and Big Thief? The main front woman, Adrienne Linker of Big Thief, won the New Folk competition as well one year. So what do you think it is that it's about a festival community that allows for that to be a breeding ground?
I don't think you can separate Kerrville from the cultural standing that music has in Texas in general, which is very unusual. There's not a lot of regional scenes like there is in Texas. Music is really, really respected in Texas by listeners. There's a huge culture of going out to see it. So I think in the same way, I know that red dirt music is very different in some ways than folk music, but I think that Kerrville is just an extension of the folk version of that. You know what I mean? Like, there's just this huge listenership of music. There's this huge culture of respect for music in Texas. And Kerrville just seems to be a really natural outgrowth of that. I mean, the apocryphal story is that LBJ came to one of the first Kerrville Folk Festivals, if not the first one. So you have an ex-president coming to hear basically a jamboree in his backyard, and that's the standing that it has. So I'm sure that's why Kerrville has had such an effect, just because the soil in Texas is just so fertile for an appreciation of music.
we're very lucky in that sense, for sure.
And I've come to know the manger that you sleep in. I have come to be the stranger that you keep. I've come from down the road, and my footsteps never slowed. Before we met, I knew we'd meet. Oh, before we met, I knew we'd meet. And I've come here to ignore your cries and heartaches. I've come to closely listen to you sing. I've come here to insist that I leave here with a kiss. I've come to say exactly what I mean, and I mean so many things.
I'm just going to ask a couple silly questions and then let you be on your way. I was curious about if I was going to go this route, but then your Sunday songs, sad boy poetry corner submission. Yeah. I still haven't finished reading it. It's so long, but it's so great. So just a couple, just fun ones. Pineapple on pizza or no?
No.
Thank you. That's the right answer.
Great.
Ribs, dry rub or a sauce?
Dry rub.
Ooh, okay. All right. All right. How many songs would you say that you've written, all told? Could you make any kind of?
Between 400 and 500.
Okay. That's pretty cool. Do you dog ear or use a bookmark when you're reading a book?
In my better days, I use a bookmark, but there's a lot of dog-eared books in my house.
What is your favorite poem or poet? I know that's a very hard question for someone that loves poetry like you, but.
My favorite poem is a poem by a guy named Steve Scafidi, and it's called Thank You, Lord, for the Dark Ablaze.
Okay, cool. And what is your biggest fish for the working songwriter? Like if just the top, man, if I could get that person.
I mean, how could you not say Dylan at this point? You know what I mean? I don't think there's any chance, but how could you not say him?
Well, I will tell you that I shot for the stars with this one and I succeeded. So you should just try. I don't know that he's going to be as into emailing as much as you are, but all they can do is say no.
I'll see if I can find a Hotmail address for
Maybe he's on AOL still.
Yeah, dial-up.
Or his MySpace or something. Right. Do you miss Lone Star beer?
No, I miss I like Pearl Snap beer. If I'm going to drink cheap beer, which I do drink a lot of, I just drink Miller Lite and always have. So.
Okay, and then I got one more silly question. Do you have multiple hats with a name, the car, and some weird fact about your Bandzoogle ad intro? You always have a name of the web designer. It's always a different name. He always drives a different car. There's always some weird little fact about him. Do you have some random jars that you pull that out of?
No, it just generally takes place Thursday night as I'm pulling the episode together frantically. So sometimes I'll look up. Usually, if I'm really drawing to the bottom of the barrel, I'll Google popular French boy names.
Is that how you pick the names of your people in your songs too?
Thankfully, those come from a more genuine place usually. So.
Oh man.
And you've come to know me stubborn as a butcher. And you've come to know me thankless as a guest.
Last thing, do you have any tips, tricks, traps for songwriters out there that you want to pass along?
Just the idea to not, we live in a really free and democratic world for creativity and art right now with the internet, and it's never been this free before, and who knows how free it will be going forward. Just don't wait on anybody, because you might have had an excuse in years past, and you might have an excuse in years to come of, little guy can't get ahead, this, that, and the other. But I really don't find that to be the case now. You just need a song in your heart and you need an internet connection. And if you got those two things, you stand a pretty good chance of getting the world to hear it, I would say.
This has definitely been a leveler of the game, because before, when someone was playing a song in their bedroom, you kind of automatically would discredit it as not being viable because it's just somebody in their bedroom.
Right.
But now you've got, Grammy award winning people playing songs, and sometimes with the same production value. So
Yep.
it's kind of like, really, the silver lining is, I suppose, is that it's giving us an opportunity to find something that maybe works a little bit better for the songwriter in sharing the songs.
Yeah, I hope so. I really have no idea what's going to happen after this. I just know that particularly for music and the music business, in a way that almost no other business is going to feel it. COVID is going to have been a BC and AD moment. It's going to be a before and after type of deal. You're going to see a lot of people leave on the business end. You're going to see a lot of people leave on the club and nightclub end. You're going to see a lot of people leave, musicians, songwriters, and it's just going to be, I think there's going to be very little correlation to the music business pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Joe, and your insight on, what's happening. And thanks for being at the Kerrville Folk Festival in 2012. And, I hope that maybe you can come back one day.
You guys just haven't asked me. It's been 8 years. I'll come back anytime. I love Kerrville.
Okay, well, now we know. Now we know that your email line is open and receiving, and that you enjoyed your time. And I really enjoyed your time. Thank you I just cold called, asked if I could do this, and you were very gracious and willing to take the time out of your busy day. So we just thank you so much over here, and just wish you the best in figuring out how to make this transition work the best for you and your family.
You recognize my face when God's awful grace strips me of my jacket and my vest and reveals all the treasure in my chest.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and long live the Kerrville Folk Festival.
Thank you so much.
Peace.
Yeah.